Welcome to Mornings with Meep. Today is November 11th, 2018, and it's been 100 years since the end of World War I. There's going to be a lot of retrospective pieces, I'm sure, on TV, in papers, online, and that sort of thing. It really didn't affect the U.S. so much. The U.S. entered the war late. We had more soldier deaths from the Spanish flu pandemic than from battle. So it really didn't, and of course all of the action was overseas and pretty far away from the US. So the US didn't feel it as horribly as Europe did. And of course, horrible devastation was wreaked on Europe at the time. The mortality, especially for the countries where the battles were held, such as in Belgium and France and Germany, that the mortality was devastating. Even just looked at as a percent of the overall population, but forget about that. Think of a whole generation of young men who were decimated, very, very high mortality rates. And we can see that this had an effect later on in the run-up to World War II. It really helps to understand how bad World War I was, how it started. Yeah, we all get into the assassination, but that really was a pretext. Everybody knew war was coming. It was a matter of timing. And of course, generally, France and Germany knew they were going to be sparring, and it was a question of who would make the first move. You might have a strategic advantage. That said, if you make the first move without much of a pretext, and Germany really didn't have much of a pretext, international opinion, you might not get the allies you want. So a lot of the countries and a lot of the people volunteered early on to fight. Drafts came later, all pumped up for the honor and the glory of fighting for your nation. That soured very rapidly. And in light of that, I want to read some poetry that came out of World War I. Now, certain poems you're going to be hearing a lot of today if you're looking for World War I stuff, like, what is it, The Soldier by, just looking down this list, sorry. The Soldier by Rupert Brooke, and there's a story behind that. That's somewhat sentimental, and that's in the first year of the war. But we see it change in tone as we go further on. And some of these, when you're far away, are written by people who weren't in the war themselves, and some were by soldiers who were in the war. I want to read two that are rarely read, they're by famous poets, so you'll recognize the names. So, On Being Asked for a War Poem. This is after the war is over. It's by William Butler Yeats. I think it better that in times like these a poet's mouth be silent, for in truth we have no gift to set a statesman right. He's had enough of meddling, who can please a young girl in the indolence of her youth, or an old man upon a winter's night. One sees a lot of this kind of sourness about the leadership in Europe all around. There was such gross incompetence in prosecuting the war. And then once everyone was fully mired in it, after it became very evident it was not going to be a short war, which everybody thought it was, that they didn't come together to try to come up with an armistice, just ceasefire to stop it, because no one basically was winning. The problem was those who really couldn't win in the long run. I just want one more win. I want to negotiate from a position of power. And when you're in a situation where you essentially have to crush one of the sides to get the war to stop, that's going to be devastating. So the last poem, Elegy in a Country Courtyard by G.K. Chesterton. The men that worked for England, they have their graves at home, and birds and bees of England about the cross can roam. But they that fought for England, following a falling star, alas, alas for England, they have their graves afar. And they that rule in England, in stately conclave met, alas, alas for England, they have no graves as yet.